your host, Quinn Bandam. In today's buzz, how a local pastor is bringing the community together in order to tackle the issue of homeless.
Ready.
Hello.
Hello.
So, Pastor David, I hear about your program, Night of Hospitality. Would you please talk to us about what it is?
Nights of Hospitality is a temporary overnight shelter. We started 8 years ago and pretty much patterned it after the overnights of hospitality that some churches in Plymouth were doing and had been doing for a number of years. We started in January during an especially cold period of the winter when we realized we needed to stop talking about shelter and actually provide shelter. So that first year there were 4 churches that opened their doors to providing a place for homeless people to come. We had 3 gentlemen that took our offer of hospitality that year. The next few years we slowly increased that number. The last few years there's been a significant increase in the number of people as well as women. This year we've had about 50 different people, including about 11 or 12 women who have taken advantage of the shelter and come in for at least one night. Essentially we provide a warm place from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We have a dinner provided at 7 o'clock and then from 9 o'clock until about 6 o'clock the next morning the lights are out and they've got a place to sleep. We've had air mattresses and blankets. Many of the blankets have been donated by different churches and organizations around town. And then we provide a breakfast in the morning, and at 7 o'clock in the morning they're back out onto the streets or going wherever they spend their day.
Now, what inspired you to start Night of Hospitality? Because I hear that it is your idea.
We wanted to try to do something that would keep people from freezing to death. Over the years there have been a number of people that have frozen to death during the winter, and we wanted to try to keep that from happening again. So it was something that the members of the Clergy Association here in town had been talking about year in and year out. There were a number of people who homeless people who hung out on Main Street downtown. There were people that hung out during the day at Walmart. We knew that there were some people that were living in tents in the woods. And so every year cold weather would come and we would start talking about what we might be able to do. And we do it for 12 weeks, usually beginning the Sunday after Christmas and then going for 12 weeks. Sometime in mid-March is when we end.
Yes.
Those are the coldest months of the year. It's all staffed by volunteers from our churches. The people that provide the meals do so free of charge. And the people that spend the evening or the overnight providing supervision are volunteers from our churches. In recent years we've had a number of organizations like the Elks Club here in Wareham, the Eagles Club in Buzzards Bay, which provide meals. Elks Club does 2 dinners each week and the Eagles does a breakfast on Sunday mornings. And then there are some other people that have heard about it through the media and have volunteered their time to come in and provide supervision overnight. So it's really starting to include a lot of people from the community as well.
Wonderful. Now, to my understanding, that there are 3 churches involved in this program, or are there more?
This year, there are 2 churches that are providing the facilities.
Okay.
It's the Church of the Nazarene and the Catholic Church, St. Patrick's up on High Street.
All right.
There are 5 churches, including those 2 churches, that are providing staff to provide supervision and meals.
Oh, okay.
So, and over the years we've had probably 5 or 6 different churches that at one time or another were providing the location. But because of building codes, not all of them were able to provide the space anymore. So now we've got some of those churches that continue to provide personnel and meals.
Okay.
So currently there are 5 churches that are doing staffing.
Yes. Last week I was in St. Patrick's, and that, to my understanding, that building is coded well and follows the rules and regulations that people can stay there overnight.
Yes, they recently did some renovation work, and so they're up to code, and we did a few things here at our church as well.
Okay.
We had to put in hardwired carbon monoxide sensors.
Yes.
There are American with Disability Act requirements, and so some of the churches that couldn't afford to put in an elevator or couldn't afford to put in sprinkler systems were no longer able to provide the facilities. So it's just these two churches that have facilities that are adequate for meeting the codes.
And you have to meet all those codes in order to have people stay there overnight.
Right. There are state regulations that dictate certain things for temporary overnight shelters, and so each fall, various inspectors from the town come to make sure that everything's up to code, and so we're down to 2 churches.
Now, are you receiving any help from the state?
No, it's a fairly low budget operation.
Yes.
We use air mattresses, and so occasionally we have to replace air mattresses. And as I mentioned, people donate the meals, so we don't have to spend an awful lot of money for this, unless some of these other churches wanted to improve their buildings so that they would also meet the code. But that's probably on the order of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to put in an elevator and those sorts of things.
Yes.
So no, we don't receive any money from the state. We've received grants from the Elks Club, and we've received gifts, monetary gifts from the Masonic Lodge here in town. Various individuals have donated money over the years, but really it's a low budget operation.
So it all depends on people and if
Yeah.
they have anything to provide, really.
Yeah. We've got some of the things. There's a builders club at the middle school. The middle school children that are part of this club have knit hats and scarves and donated them. There's a knitting club that's done the same thing.
Yes.
There's a young man named Jack Walsh who lives in another town, but his grandparents work in this town, live and work in this town, and he raised funds to buy personal hygiene things, socks, gloves, several $100s of money that was donated. So people are chipping in to help us provide the kind of things that homeless people would need to be able to survive during the day. Warm clothes and occasionally some extra food that they can take with them for lunch and those sorts of things.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that the program is not year-round.
Right.
It's limited for a certain amount of weeks, and mostly towards the coldest months in winter. Are you thinking of expanding it? I mean, what happens in the summer and the spring?
That's been a question that people have raised from time to time. We don't have a year-round homeless shelter in Wareham. The closest shelters are in Hyannis and Brockton and New Bedford. And so a few years ago, after several years of doing the Nights of Hospitality and people were asking why couldn't we do this year-round, we convened a meeting of various people in town that had an interest in homelessness. And really the conclusion we came to was that a year-round shelter is not the solution to homelessness. It's really just warehousing people. The real solution to this is to get people into houses. And so a number of people in town have been working for the last few years on what we call the Plan to End Homelessness in Wareham, which is really a modification or adaptation of a nationwide program called Housing First. Housing First is a philosophy that says that the most important thing to provide for homeless people is subsidized housing. That they really can't deal with mental health issues or addiction issues or joblessness or various things that might be contributing to their homelessness. They really can't effectively deal with those things if they don't have a secure place to live. And so the philosophy is to provide subsidized housing for people and then surround them with wraparound services that deal with some of these issues that may have contributed to their homelessness. So rather than put our efforts into a year-round shelter, we've decided to just provide this during the most critically important months of the year, and then do all we can to advocate for a housing first approach to ending homelessness. Perhaps the the biggest partner that we have in this regard is Turning Point, which is a day resource center for homeless and low-income families that operates here out of our church at the Church of the Nazarene. Turning Point, in conjunction with Father Bill's and Mainspring, which run shelters and housing programs in Brockton and Quincy and Plymouth, have actually this past year been able to find subsidized housing for 21 different chronically homeless people. So the people, many of them had been coming to Nights of Hospitality in recent years. This year they were able to put them into subsidized housing.
Okay.
So
it is helping.
It is helping.
Yes.
Although there's been an explosion of homelessness this winter.
Why do you think so?
Well, the last 2 or 3 years we've averaged about 7 people per night.
Yes.
This year we're probably doubling that. We've had as many as 21 guests, and usually it's been in the mid-teens. I still think that most of those people come from Wareham. They're natives of Wareham. So it's not like we're attracting people from other parts of the state. I heard that there were some abandoned buildings that had been places where squatters were staying, that those people were driven out. Perhaps some of those people that had a place to stay are now coming into the shelter, or it could just be economic conditions. I'm not quite sure, but we've got more people this year by double or triple the number of people that we've had in recent years.
Now, do you happen to know what's the cause of their homeless? I mean, these people that you have in for the Night of Hospitality, and you mentioned that most of them are teens. Is it drugs related, or is it just other circumstances in their lives that have made them be where they are?
The stories are as varied as the people.
Yes.
Our guests have ranged from age 19 or 20 to mid-60s. There are people who obviously have alcohol addiction or drug addiction problems. There are several people over the years that I would say, in my unprofessional opinion, were dealing with some significant mental health issues.
Yes.
There were people who had gotten divorced, and then as a result of having to rent 2 different places, couldn't afford to live there anymore, and ended up on the streets. Back near the beginning of the time that we were doing in 2008 with the economic downturn, there were a lot of people who were day laborers who lost their construction jobs or what have you, and with a matter of a month or 2 consequently lost their apartments. There are people who leave here at 7 o'clock in the morning, often getting picked up by a boss or a friend to go work a job. They're not all jobless.
Yes.
And
but
yet
just
they're
not enough income to
make
sustain a
enough income.
place.
Right.
Wow. Now, do you, for the Night of Hospitality, apart from just having, providing them with a safe place to stay and a warm meal, do you offer any other programs, maybe mentally wise, that could help them?
We've got a number of partners with whom we work, ranging from Turning Point. So usually one night a week or so, one of the outreach workers from Turning Point will come to the Nights of Hospitality shelter to interview people, really providing an assessment that might help it ultimately get that person into subsidized housing. We have the Greater New Bedford Community Health Center that just moved to town here a year ago or so, has come over several times to provide essential health screening. Seven Hills Behavioral Health is one of the partners that's just recently come in. They do HIV testing, hepatitis C testing. So the kind of things that we have to offer aren't things that we, the volunteers from the churches, but we've got a good partnership with other agencies and organizations that can provide some help to people.
Last winter was one of the toughest winter we faced. I mean, even for people with just places to stay, still we felt the hardship of the winter. Now, in terms of program, did it put a dent into the program?
The numbers were a little higher than they had been the previous winter, but not as high as it has been this winter. And here we've had very little snow and,
Yes.
and relative warmth. Last winter, the problems were probably in people being able to get from wherever it was they spend the day to the church, because the
Yes.
roads were, plowed as well as they could be, but there was just no place to walk,
Yes.
or it was extremely cold and windy, and so quite often we would open the shelters earlier than 7 p.m. On those especially harsh days.
Did you provide some type of training for your volunteers? When I attended St. Patrick's, and it was very emotional for me, and I could just see myself not knowing where the boundaries end, how much to really help or involve yourself into somebody else's life. So did you provide some type of help for your volunteers?
We do an orientation at the beginning, before the Nights of Hospitality begin in December, where we go through the basics of where to find things and how we do things. We haven't really provided much orientation on the emotional aspects of it. Although my sense is that all of the volunteers from the different churches really do want to try to build relationships.
Okay.
You know, I've heard stories of people who really have gone out of their way to help people during the day, certainly to pray for them, to get to know their stories. But there's also, I guess on the other side of the equation, there's the fact that oftentimes, because of some of their behaviors, we do provide a supervisory role, a almost parental role sometimes.
Okay.
You know, we have to keep the place. Our number one objective is to provide a safe place for homeless people to come for the night. And so we're what's called a wet shelter, meaning that guests can come in drunk and stay as long as they don't become belligerent or violent or create problems for other people. They're welcome to stay. But occasionally somebody will come in and they're drunk enough or high enough that they begin to create problems and it becomes unsafe, and so we ask them to leave.
Okay.
And so we have to play that role too as supervisors, which sometimes gets in the way perhaps of being able to build relationships, but that's the tension that we have to maintain.
Now, where do you see the program going?
Honestly, I think we'll just continue to do what we have been doing.
Okay.
We are a volunteer organization, and while over the years an extraordinary number of people have volunteered, as the years have gone by, there's a smaller and smaller core of people who are really passionate about volunteering. So we really don't have the personnel to expand the program. 12 weeks is about as much as we can do. What it means for the most involved churches is 21 nights of volunteers coming and spending the night. And these are people who work during the day, have busy families and lives themselves, so we really don't have the volunteers to be able to offer an expanded program. And again, our mission is to provide the most essential protection for those who might otherwise die if they were exposed to the cold outside. Mission creep is something that is always a problem. You know, do we provide transportation to people? Do we do laundry? You know, we've just decided dinner, breakfast, a safe place to sleep, and a clean pair of socks and a hand warmer if they need it, and that's about all we can really provide, judging from the responses to newspaper articles over the year. There are those in town who would like to ignore the fact or deny the fact that we've got homeless people in town. You know, maybe we see this as a tourist town, and that might not be the image that we want to project. And yet, like every other town and city in this country, there are people who, for whatever reason, are struggling to make ends meet. Sometimes, yes, it's because of their behaviors which have caused them to lose their housing or their marriages have fallen apart. But in some cases, it's just economic conditions in the country at large that have rendered them homeless. And so, you know, we don't see this as something that's, we're providing for people from other towns or other parts of the states. These are citizens of our town. They just may not have an address the way most other people needs. There are other people that for a variety of reasons are struggling to meet their own needs, and we believe that at the very least we can provide a safe place where people won't end up dying from exposure and live to live another day. So that's why we do this.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And thank you very much for opening your doors to us and to teach us more about what the program is about and what it has to offer.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for watching The Buzz with me, your host, Queen Banda. Please tune in next week for more Buzz. Until then, keep safe. Thank you.